I arrived at the law office 15 minutes early that Tuesday morning. It had been exactly 1 week since we buried Thomas, and I still couldn't walk past his study without expecting to see him there, reading the Wall Street Journal with his morning coffee. But Thomas was gone, and I was about to hear his final wishes read aloud by James Morrison, the attorney who'd been his friend for 30 years. The conference room door was slightly ajar when I stepped off the elevator. I was reaching for the handle when I heard my son's voice, sharp and impatient in a way I'd never heard him speak before. "Once we get control of the company, we're selling it immediately," Brandon said. "I already have 3 buyers interested. We could close within 60 days. A woman's voice responded. Amber, the girlfriend he'd been living with for 2 years but still hadn't married. And the house? That Pacific Heights mansion must be worth at least $8 million. "We'll put Mom in Meadowbrook," Brandon said. The name hit me like a slap. Meadowbrook was the nursing facility where Thomas and I had visited his mother before she passed. Basic care, small rooms, the smell of institutional meals, and disinfectant. It's actually pretty nice, and way cheaper than maintaining that huge house. She doesn't need all that space anyway. "What about your sister Emma?" Amber asked. "She's 19. Not our problem anymore. Dad was paying for Berkeley, but that ends now. She can get student loans like everyone else. We deserve this money after putting up with your boring parents for years." I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand still extended toward the door. My heart hammered so hard I thought they might hear it. This was my son. My Brandon, who I'd rocked through nightmares, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, who'd cried in my arms when his college girlfriend broke his heart, and he was planning to warehouse me like furniture he didn't need anymore. I pulled my hand back and walked to the restroom, needing a moment to compose myself. In the mirror, I looked every one of my 68 years. The fluorescent lights showed every line grief had carved into my face this past week. I gripped the edge of the sink and made myself breathe. When I returned to the conference room 5 minutes later, Brandon and Amber were seated across from James Morrison's empty chair. They looked up with practiced smiles. "Hey, Mom," Brandon said, standing to kiss my cheek. "How are you holding up?" I wanted to throw his hypocrisy back in his face, but something stopped me. Maybe it was Thomas's voice in my head, the way he'd always said, "Watch and wait, Margaret. People show you who they are if you give them time." So I just nodded and sat down. "As well as can be expected," I said quietly. Amber squeezed my hand with perfectly manicured nails. "We're here for you. Whatever you need." James Morrison entered then, a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too many families tear themselves apart over money. He'd been at the funeral, had held my hand and told me Thomas had been the best man he'd ever known. "Thank you all for coming," James said, settling into his chair and opening a leather portfolio. "I know this is difficult, especially so soon after Thomas's passing, but he was very specific about the timeline for reading the will." He pulled out several documents and adjusted his reading glasses. The last will and testament of Thomas Chen, executed on October 15th of this year. I felt Brandon go rigid beside me. October 15th was exactly 1 month before Thomas died. He'd updated his will just weeks before the heart attack took him. James began reading the standard language, the legal formalities that I barely heard. Then he reached the distribution of assets. "To my beloved wife Margaret, I leave our home at 2847 Pacific Heights Boulevard, along with all its contents and furnishings, to remain hers for the duration of her natural life." I exhaled. At least I had the house. "To my son Brandon Chen, I leave my position as controlling shareholder and CEO of Chen Technologies, along with all voting rights and responsibilities pertaining to said company, with the following conditions." Brandon leaned forward. This was what he'd been waiting for. James's voice took on a careful tone. "Brandon will assume full control of the company immediately, with all decision-making authority. However, there is a sealed letter in my possession, to be opened only if Brandon attempts to sell, merge, or dissolve Chen Technologies within 5 years of my death, or if he attempts to remove Margaret Chen from the family home against her wishes during the same period." "What?" Brandon's voice cracked. "A sealed letter?" What does that mean? It means your father left instructions that will only be revealed if you take certain actions, James said calmly. The letter remains sealed unless you trigger one of those conditions. That's ridiculous, Amber interjected. You can't put conditions on an inheritance like that. James looked at her over his glasses. I'm sorry, but who are you? This is Amber, my girlfriend, Brandon said quickly. Then I'm afraid this discussion is limited to family members only, James said, not unkindly but firmly. If you could wait in the lobby, please. Amber's face flushed, but she stood and left, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. After the door closed, James continued. There's more. To my granddaughter, Emma Chen, I leave a trust fund in the amount of $500,000 to be used exclusively for her education and establishment in her chosen career, administered by my wife Margaret Chen, until Emma reaches the age of 25. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thomas had made sure our granddaughter would be taken care of. And finally, James said, the sealed letter contains important information that I believed might be necessary after my death. It is to be opened only under the conditions I've specified. Brandon, I need you to sign this acknowledgement that you understand these terms. Brandon's hand shook as he signed. I could see the muscle working in his jaw, the same tell he'd had since childhood, when he was angry but trying to hide it. After we left the office, Brandon was quiet on the drive back to the house. He'd insisted on picking me up that morning, said I shouldn't drive while grieving. Now I wondered if it was just to make sure I heard the will reading the way he wanted me to hear it. That was strange, wasn't it? He finally said. Dad, putting those weird conditions on everything. Your father was always thorough, I said carefully. Still, a sealed letter? It's like he didn't trust me. Brandon's voice carried an edge of hurt that might have been genuine. I mean, why would I sell the company? It's been in our family for 30 years. I didn't answer. I was remembering what I'd overheard. 3 buyers already interested, close within 60 days. When we pulled up to the house, Amber was waiting on the front steps. She must have driven straight from the law office. Well? She demanded as Brandon got out of the car. What happened after I left? Not now, Brandon said, glancing at me as I climbed out of the passenger seat. But Amber wasn't finished. Did you get the company? Can we move forward with the sale? I said not now, Brandon snapped. I walked past them into the house. Into the home Thomas and I had built together over 33 years of marriage. Every corner held a memory. The living room where we'd hosted Emma's high school graduation party. The kitchen where Thomas had taught Brandon to make his grandmother's dumplings. The master bedroom where Thomas had died in his sleep, his hand still holding mine. I couldn't lose this. I wouldn't. Over the next week, Brandon and Amber became constant presences in my life. They'd moved into the guest house, ostensibly to help me through my grief, but I knew better now. I watched them watch me, calculating, waiting. Amber started small, suggesting I might want to simplify my living situation, bringing brochures for active senior communities that looked nothing like nursing homes but weren't far off, commenting on how big the house was, how much work it must be to maintain. You know, Margaret, she said one morning over coffee. Brandon and I were thinking, this house is really too much for one person, and you're not getting any younger. What if you fell on those stairs? What if something happened and nobody was here? I have my emergency alert system, I said. And Maria comes 3 times a week. Maria. Amber's lip curled slightly. That's another thing. Do you really need a housekeeper? That's such an unnecessary expense. Thomas always made sure Maria was taken care of. She's been with us for 15 years. Well, Thomas isn't here anymore, is he? The cruelty of it took my breath away. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Emma, calling from Berkeley. Grandma? Her voice was thick with tears. Did you know about the trust fund? Yes, sweetheart. Your grandfather wanted to make sure you could finish school. Brandon called me this morning. He said the trust is being contested, that there might not be any money, that I should drop out and get a job. She was sobbing now. Grandma, I'm in the middle of midterms. I can't drop out. This was my dream. Rage flooded through me, hot and clean. Emma, listen to me. Your grandfather set up that trust, and nobody is going to touch it. Do you understand? Nobody. You stay in school, and you call me if Brandon contacts you again. After I hung up, I sat very still in Thomas's study. His reading glasses were still on the desk, next to the book he'd been reading the night before he died, a biography of Teddy Roosevelt. Thomas had always admired Roosevelt's trust-busting, his fierce protection of the vulnerable. I picked up my phone and called James Morrison. I need to know what's in that letter, I told him when he answered. There was a long pause. Margaret, I can't share the contents unless the conditions are triggered. Then tell me this. Did Thomas know about Brandon and Amber's plans? Another pause. What plans? I told him everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the pressure to move out, the lies to Emma about the trust fund, the realtor who'd shown up yesterday to just take a look around. Margaret, James said carefully, I think you should come to my office tomorrow. Alone. There are things we need to discuss. The next morning, I told Brandon I had a doctor's appointment. He barely looked up from his laptop, where I could see spreadsheets labeled Asset Liquidation Timeline. James's office was in a building downtown, with a view of the bay that Thomas had always loved. He poured me tea and settled into the chair across from me. I'm going to tell you something that might upset you, he began. Thomas hired a private investigator 3 months before he died. The words didn't make sense at first. A private investigator? Why? He'd noticed discrepancies in the company books. Small at first, but growing. Money disappearing from accounts, being moved around in ways that didn't make sense. James opened a folder on his desk. He didn't want to believe it was Brandon, but the evidence was clear. He slid photographs across the desk. Brandon at expensive restaurants, charging meals to company accounts. Brandon transferring funds to personal accounts, covering it up with false invoices. Brandon taking cash payments from a competitor for insider information about Chen Technologies' upcoming product launches. How much? I whispered. Over $500,000 in the past 2 years. I felt sick. Did Thomas confront him? No. He wanted to give Brandon a chance to come clean, to prove he could change. That's why he updated the will the way he did. If Brandon could run the company honestly for 5 years without selling it or trying to remove you from your home, Thomas was willing to forgive the embezzlement. But if Brandon showed he hadn't changed, if he tried to cash out immediately, what's in the sealed letter? James met my eyes. Proof of the embezzlement, along with instructions to transfer all assets to Emma upon Brandon's violation of the will's terms. And a police report, ready to be filed. Thomas didn't want to send his son to prison, but he also wouldn't let Brandon destroy the company he'd built or hurt you or Emma. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed. Thomas had known. He'd known everything, and he'd still tried to protect our son, to give him one last chance to be the man we'd raised him to be. There's more, James said quietly. The PI followed Brandon and Amber last week. They've already signed a preliminary agreement to sell Chen Technologies to Meridian Corp. The deal is supposed to close in 45 days. Can we stop it? If Brandon signs the final contract, it triggers the sealed letter, everything transfers to Emma. But Margaret, you need to be prepared. This will destroy your relationship with your son. I thought about Emma crying on the phone. About Maria, who'd been fired by Amber that very morning while I was in this office. About Thomas, who'd worked 18-hour days to build Chen Technologies from nothing, who'd believed in integrity above all else. He destroyed it himself, I said. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I returned home to find Brandon and Amber in the living room with 3 people in suits, real estate agents, going room by room with measuring tapes and cameras. What is this? I demanded. Brandon had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, we need to talk about the house. The market is really strong right now, and… Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me? I said get out. All of you. This is my home, and you have no right to be here measuring it like it's already yours. One of the agents started to protest, but something in my face stopped her. They gathered their materials and left, Amber following with a venomous glare. Brandon stayed. Mom, you're being unreasonable. We're trying to help you. Help me? I laughed, a harsh sound. You lied to your sister about her trust fund. You fired Maria without asking me. You're planning to sell your father's company before his grave has even settled, and you want to put me in a nursing home so you can have this house. Don't you dare tell me you're trying to help. His face went red. You don't understand the financial realities. The company is worth millions, but only if we sell now. In 5 years, the technology will be obsolete. Dad's will is sabotaging my inheritance. Your inheritance? I felt something break inside me. Your father gave you everything. He gave you a company, a legacy, a chance to build on what he created, and all you can see is the price tag. I'm not you, Mom. I'm not going to spend my whole life being boring and responsible and grateful for scraps. Amber and I deserve to actually enjoy our lives while we're young enough to appreciate it. Then do it with money you've earned honestly. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe. What are you talking about? I know about the embezzlement, Brandon. I know about the $500,000 you stole from the company. I know about the insider information you sold to Meridian. He went white. That's a lie. Who told you that? Your father knew. Before he died, he knew everything. Brandon's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me, this stranger wearing my son's face. Then he seemed to crumple. He never said anything, Brandon whispered. He was giving you a chance to change. That's what the will conditions were about. He would have forgiven you, if you'd just proven you could be trusted. Forgiven me? Brandon's voice rose. He left me a company I can't sell and conditions I can't meet. That's not forgiveness. That's a prison sentence. It's a test you're failing. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he made his choice. His face hardened. Fine, if that's how you want it. I'm signing the Meridian contract tomorrow. And you know what? I'm going to court to have you declared incompetent to manage your own affairs. You're 68 years old, living alone in a house this size, clearly not thinking rationally. Any judge will see you need supervised care. He stormed out, and I heard Amber's voice in the driveway, shrill and triumphant. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt calm. I called James Morrison. He's signing the contract tomorrow, I said. He's going to trigger the letter. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I thought about Thomas, about the hours he'd spent building Chen Technologies into something he could be proud of, about Emma, brilliant and kind, studying engineering because she wanted to follow in her grandfather's footsteps, about the man Brandon had become, or maybe had always been beneath the surface. I'm sure, I said. Open the letter. The next day, James called an emergency meeting at his office. Brandon arrived with Amber and a lawyer he'd hired, a slick young man in an expensive suit who clearly thought this would be simple. My client is prepared to file for conservatorship of Margaret Chen, the lawyer began. We have medical experts ready to testify that she's not capable of. Your client embezzled $500,000 from Chen Technologies, James interrupted, sliding a thick folder across the table. These are bank records, falsified invoices, emails with Meridian Corp selling insider information. Your client signed a contract this morning to sell the company, violating the terms of his father's will. Brandon's lawyer opened the folder. His face went from confident to pale in seconds. The sealed letter has been opened, James continued. Per the terms of Thomas Chen's will, all assets previously designated for Brandon Chen are hereby transferred to Emma Chen, held in trust until she reaches age 25. This includes the company, all associated accounts, and any proceeds from the sale Brandon attempted to execute. You can't do this, Brandon said, but his voice shook. It's already done. Additionally, this folder contains a police report documenting your embezzlement. Your father chose not to file it while he was alive, hoping you would change. That decision now rests with the new owner of Chen Technologies. Brandon looked at me. Mom, please, I'm your son. You were gonna put me in a nursing home, I said quietly. You told your sister her education didn't matter. You stole from your father's company, and when I confronted you, You threatened to have me declared incompetent. I stood up. You stopped being my son the moment you chose greed over family. His lawyer was frantically reading through the documents. There might be grounds to contest this. The conditions in the will could be seen as coercive, and, try it, James said. I'll file the police report tomorrow, and Brandon will face criminal charges. Or, he can walk away quietly. And we'll consider the embezzlement a family matter that's been resolved internally. Amber grabbed Brandon's arm. This is bullshit. We had plans. We were supposed to. Shut up, Brandon hissed at her. No, I won't shut up. I didn't waste 2 years of my life for nothing. You promised me. I said, shut up. He turned to his lawyer. What are my options? The lawyer looked miserable. Honestly, take the deal. The evidence of embezzlement is airtight. If they press charges, you're looking at 5 to 10 years. I watched my son's face as he processed this. Watched the calculations, the desperate search for an angle, a loophole, anything. And I saw the moment he realized there wasn't one. Fine, he said finally. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't file the police report. And you'll vacate Margaret's home immediately, James added. All personal belongings removed by end of week. No contact with Margaret or Emma unless they initiate it. Brandon signed. His hand shook so badly he could barely write his name. Amber stood abruptly. This is insane. Brandon, tell them. We're done, Amber, Brandon said, not looking at her. What? No, we just need to. I said we're done. Get out. She stared at him, and I saw her face change as she realized the money was gone, and without the money, Brandon was worthless to her. She grabbed her purse and left without another word. Brandon sat there for a moment longer, then looked at me one last time. Did you ever love me? The question caught me off guard. Of course I loved you. I still love you. That's why this hurts so much. He nodded slowly, then stood and left. I never saw him again. 3 months later, Emma came home for winter break. She'd been appointed the new CEO of Chen Technologies, with James serving as advisor until she finished school. The company was thriving under professional management, and Emma had already implemented some of her grandfather's old ideas that Brandon had dismissed. We were in the kitchen making dumplings, using Thomas's mother's recipe. Emma's technique was getting better, though her folds still weren't quite as tight as they needed to be. Do you think about him? She asked quietly. Brandon, every day, I admitted. I wonder if we failed him somehow, if there was something we missed when he was young, some moment where things could have gone differently. Grandpa's letter said Brandon made his own choices. I'd let Emma read the whole letter, the one Thomas had sealed. It was full of love and regret, but also firm in its conviction that Brandon had to face consequences for his actions. He did, I said. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Emma set down her dumpling and hugged me. Thank you for protecting what Grandpa built, and for protecting me. That's what family does, I said. Real family. Maria joined us then, carrying groceries. After Amber fired her, I'd hired her back immediately, with a raise. She'd been part of our family for 15 years, and she deserved to be treated like it. The house looks beautiful, I told her. She'd put up Christmas decorations that morning, the same ones Thomas and I had used for years. It's good to have life back in here, Maria said. Mr. Chen would be happy. That night, after Emma had gone to bed and Maria had gone home, I sat in Thomas's study with a cup of tea. The house was quiet around me, but it was a peaceful quiet now, not the tense silence of those awful weeks with Brandon and Amber. I picked up the photograph on Thomas's desk. Our wedding day, both of us so young and hopeful. We'd built a good life together, not perfect, not without pain, but good. And we'd protected what mattered in the end. I thought about Brandon sometimes, wondered where he was, if he was okay. But mostly I thought about Emma, about the brilliant future ahead of her, about the company that would continue Thomas's legacy, about this home that had held so much love and would hold more still. I didn't break when they tried to take it all away. I bent, but I didn't break. And that, I thought, was exactly what Thomas had been trying to teach Brandon all along. That strength isn't about taking what you want, It's about protecting what you love. The lesson came too late for my son, but Emma understood it, and she would carry it forward.